So first, are you somebody who looks forward to a train journey? Because that's a good chance to sit back and maybe have a glass of wine and get stuck into a nice big bag of prawn cocktail flavoured crisps. Well, your days of doing that could well be numbered if the outgoing Chief Medical Officer, Dame Sally Davies, gets her way. She's published a big report today, and among the things she says we need to do, because the obesity is so rampant, is to ban eating and drinking on public transport, which would stop people snacking all the way from London to Edinburgh. There would be some exceptions. You would be able to drink water, and also breast milk would be an exception as well. We know this is a significant problem. The proportion of obese and overweight children has doubled in the past 30 years. It's a terrible, terrible problem for this country. Around a third of children are now obese or overweight by the age of 11. But would banning snacks on buses and trains do anything? Nina Mishkov is the writer and journalist. Matthew Lesh is head of research at the Adam Smith Institute. Matthew, you go first. Do you think this would be too much of a clampdown?
Look, actually, I don't think this goes far enough. I think what Sally Davies should have said in her final report was everyone should just eat grey slush from a state-run canteen, and that's the kind of world we should live in.
Oh, so you're being a little bit sarcastic.
I'm being a little bit sarcastic.
So you don't like the idea of being told, you're a slim guy, you don't want to be told what to eat on a train. Is that right? By the state?
I appreciate the compliment, but really, ultimately, I think this is a very paternalistic, condescending idea. This is something basically telling people, no, you don't know what you should eat. We want to tell you when, where, how you're supposed to deal with your own life. And in the name of childhood obesity, it's something that's going to impact all of us, because it's this idea that we should ban it for adults as well. And I think this is really just that one step too far. Just such a ridiculously absurd idea that's unenforceable, completely devoid of any evidence to think that it's going to have an impact on childhood obesity.
Well, it is enforceable in the sense that if you can ask every single person on a train for a ticket, you can certainly ask to see their sandwich.
Well, you can, but the idea was in urban transport. So I can't imagine many bus drivers or many inspectors wanting to go through the upstairs of a double-decker bus and say, oh, sir, you can't have your Mars
you
bar.
say that. We stopped smoking pretty quickly. Nina, what do you think?
Well, I think that Sally Davies is absolutely desperate, because this country has a huge problem, and it's getting worse. If you just have to look around you at the landscape of people and children who are enormously overweight, and it's a huge problem. People call it the nanny state. When pronouncements like these are made, but and that would be, I'm all for freedom and in being an individual and independent and taking charge of your own body, etc. But
we tried that,
and it doesn't work. And the problem is, if people paid for their own health, which they don't in this country, that would be absolutely fine. But the National Health Service pays for the nation's ills, and we are eating and drinking ourselves into bankruptcy in terms of what the National Health Service has. Think of all the problems caused by overeating, by overweight, by overeating. There's never mind type 2 diabetes, cancer, strokes, heart disease. It's, our hospitals and our surgeries are clogged up by people who, if they change their diet, would be healthy.
I'm conscious that some of them will be listening and will be upset to hear it, but maybe they'll also... Well, they might also support it in a strange way. Matthew, what do you think of that? Well, given that recently, I saw a story saying that a hospital was having to bring in lifting equipment from a zoo because some of its patients were so big.
I'm very uncomfortable with the idea that we should be basing manipulated public policies because of a potential cost. I don't like this kind of ledger idea where we say, oh no, you've got a certain cost to the public healthcare system, and therefore we want to manipulate your behaviour, because that could really justify
but Adam Smith
any kind of
very
behaviour.
Free market. I thought you were totally into that, the idea that you put a price tag on everything.
Well, I mean, what isn't often appreciated here is that people actually have their own sense of value, and that we can't set up
Matthew,
people
patiently,
to get pleasure.
They don't. And in your opening remarks, you said that people, you imply that people should know what is healthy and how to make the best of that. They obviously don't. That's the trouble. People are ignorant of these things, and if they are ignorant, they don't seem to care about it.
What about the idea of peer pressure, Matthew? Because your thing about, well, you can't have an inspector looking for sandwiches on a bus, fair enough. But what you can have is a notice saying no food on this bus, and then other passengers become the inspectors, which we seem to be quite good at in this country. So everyone says, put that down, you're not allowed to eat that here.
I mean, it might prove effective in some cases. People are always very good at walking past activities that are potentially wrong. But this doesn't get over the fact that what you're telling people here is that it's not right for you to get joy out of certain foods. There's a very big difference that people understand between what is healthy and what is not healthy. Sometimes you walk into the shop, you buy carrot sticks. Sometimes you buy a candy bar. It's all right in moderation. And what this kind of denormalization...
But we are not... But you just have to look. We are not eating in moderation. We are snacking all the day. And, 50 years ago, if you look at old movies or old films, you look at the landscape, there aren't fat people. The fat people are the ones who are the ones who stand out because they.
You mean if you look at the extras in a movie, or
yes, absolutely.
People walking past Cary Grant, they're all thin.
Well, yeah, absolutely. If you look at you look at old movies or old documentaries,
yeah.
We have become a grazing nation. We used to have breakfast, lunch, dinner. There weren't snacks.
You'd be hungry sometimes. I remember that.
Well,
no, but one would be sometimes feel hunger,
yes,
and think, I'm looking forward to my meal. Now you sate hunger as soon as you feel it.
Yeah. So, I mean, I'm not saying that, for instance, Ken Bruce should be arrested because he eats a sandwich on the train home.
Well, you heard that earlier.
Yes,
yeah.
exactly. But not that. But if you look at, I go into a little newspaper shop on my way to the gym every morning, and it's filled with school children buying crisps, buying chocolate bars. They don't need
but
that.
You are going to have
they shouldn't have that.
But yes, Nina, but you're going to have to restrain choice, and we've come a long way to understanding that freedom is a precious thing, and that is the freedom to eat bad food.
Yes, but then I come back to the fact that this is just building up ill health for later years. If a third of our children are obese by the age of 11, that is a crisis. That's an absolute crime, because that's almost like child abuse, because mothers and parents are not feeding nutritional food to these children.
Do we need to just build for... You sound like you accept it, Matthew, because obviously nothing works if voluntarily, nothing has worked so far. So do we just need to build a bigger country? Seats need to be wider, buses need to be wider.
Look, I think in the first instance we have to be very sceptical about some of these childhood obesity claims. If you look at some of the stats around child obesity, you find if someone's 17, there's a 25% chance, there's a quarter chance they're going to be obese. But when they turn 18, that goes down to 10%. And that's because the way we measure childhood obesity actually exaggerates it quite substantially.
You see it around you?
You do see it. Of course you see some obese people around you, but it's not a quarter of 17-year-olds. It's clearly, if you just, don't do it too much, of course, but if you stand outside of school, you're not going to see a quarter of 17-year-olds who are obese.
I went on holiday to Centre Parks and I was in the swimming pool. I looked like I was unwell.
But more fundamentally, if we're saying to people that, we don't trust you enough to choose what food you can eat, in what world do we trust people to be able to vote in our democracy? Do we consider them intelligent enough to do that? In what world are we going to have any kind of freedom in our lives
point, Nina.
if we're constantly told what we can and can't eat?
Well, look at the result of the referendum. We can't trust people to do the right thing.
So you take votes away from oversized people?
No.
Maybe people are too dumb to vote.
But it's similar, isn't it?
No, I don't think it's similar at all. The thing about nutrition and taking care of your own body is something that we should all know, and we all don't know. And if we do know about it, we don't seem to care, because as the landscape becomes larger and larger and larger, we feel that we're amongst our own kind. So the fact that we're not supposed to use the word fat anymore is one of those things, because it upsets people. You know, obesity, you're not supposed to use that anymore. We used to. I forget what the phrase was.
You can't say to anybody that they're obese, but then that seems impolite to do that.
It's not like just suffering from obesity, but you are
morbidly.
Well, the thing is, obesity was seemed to be a more acceptable word because it sounded more medical. It didn't sound so accusatory as fat. But that's the whole thing. We're becoming accustomed to it. They're thinking it's normal. Fat and overweight and obesity is not normal.
Okay, thank you very much indeed. Matthew Lesh, who's head of research at the Adam Smith Institute. Nina Mishkov, writer